Okay, thank you for doing this short interview with us. If I could just ask you your name and your ethnicity or race.
Okay, I'm Catriona Enreda Esquibel. I'm Mexican-American and with some Indigenous American.
Great. And what generation are you?
Well, that's a good question. On my mother's side, my grandmother immigrated with her mother, and her grandmother had already immigrated from Mexico. But she immigrated in 1919. On my father's side, they came from Mexico in about 1650 to northern New Mexico, and so we're actually like 12th and 13th generation on that side.
Wow.
Not counting the Native American side of the family. That's just the Spanish side.
Awesome. And growing up, do you believe that you were superstitious or exposed to a lot of superstitions or taboos?
Let's see. I was raised Catholic, and I went to Catholic school. I think there were a lot of like childhood superstitions, like step on the crack and you break your mother's back. And then some of the kind of like religious things, like if you drop something on the floor, you kiss it up. You kiss it, and then you can eat it, and it's clean. But I don't think that there were much other kinds of superstitions.
And as a kid, did you think you took these seriously? Did you believe in them?
I believed in a lot of things, so yeah, I was like, oh yeah, that's true. That's totally true. But there are also some things that I didn't believe in. Like I know, like I didn't believe that like Santa Claus was like a real figure. And I remember, I think it was like in first or second grade, my cousin told me that not believing in Santa Claus was like not believing in God. And I was just like, so.
So you'd say they came more from like a religious point,
Yeah,
maybe?
maybe.
Do you think they derive from there as well, or?
It's hard to say. Because I was very schoolgirl, so like I did really well in religion class, and I knew all the saint stories and all those kinds of things. But so I kind of don't know on that one.
Okay. Were your parents? Did they believe in any rituals or?
My mother, no, absolutely not. My mother's very like pragmatic, and she wasn't even very religious at all at that point in her life. She's like, what's going to happen is going to happen, and when it's your time to go, you're going to go. So she didn't really overthink things. My dad was, I think my dad actually was superstitious, but he didn't tell stories very much about, like he didn't tell stories like La Llorona or anything like that. But he would talk about when he was a little boy, like walking past the graveyard and being very afraid of that and things like that.
And last question is, do you think the Latino culture should embrace these superstitions, or should they just, do you think it's more something that we should be proud of, or should we just kind of ignore them and kind of disregard them as silly stories?
Okay, well, in one sense, when people say superstitions, I think that they're acknowledging that there's a different kind of knowledge, and they're devaluing that, right? They're saying there's like practicality and reason, and then there's superstition, which is ignorance. And so it's important to recognize there's that dynamic going on. And then when we think about like what is superstition, whether it's things like stories like La Llorona or the Cucuy or things like that, I think that they're an older kind of knowledge, and that there's a lesson there, and maybe it's not a lesson we want to take at face value, but it's something to sort of pay attention to. So, for example, like La Llorona is a story of a bad mother who killed her children, and some people say, Ana Castillo in her novel has a character who says, I didn't teach my children about La Llorona because all the single mothers I ever knew worked really hard to take care of their kids, and so I felt like it was a negative representation. I didn't teach it. There's that aspect. So some people will say I reject that superstition because it's ignorant. But other people are like, well, what is it really saying, and what does it really mean? Or was it trying to teach lessons before about class or about sex or about the dangerousness of giving yourself to someone else. Like, if that's a story, like maybe that's something to pay
That's
attention
good,
to. Like maybe our
Like a
young
folk
people
tale.
need to think about that too, because because like our young girls like fall in love and think like everything's gonna be great, and you just want to say like be careful. So there's that aspect, and then other things. I think again, I think it's like an older kind of knowledge that maybe we didn't learn. We certainly didn't learn in school, and it's important to kind of like hold on to some of those things. I mean, I think there's some things that are like, some things people think of like, drinking an herbal tea could be superstitious because it's not like taking medicine. But, the old herbs treated a lot of different symptoms, and so it's worthwhile to hold on to that and learn about.
Well, thank you very, very much. We appreciate your time.